welcome everybody back to the Insider Galaxy podcast. I am your host, Eric Hernandez. As always, we got to talk about our 2-2 tie that ended up into a penalty shootout, into a win against Chivas de Guadalajara that happened on Sunday, our final group stage match in the Leagues Cup tournament. We're going to talk about that game, our thoughts, our opinions about that game, our reactions, of course, what this means going forward for the Galaxy in the tournament. And so, yeah, obviously that was a big game on Sunday, a lot of action in that game, and we're going to give you everything that you guys want to hear and need to know. And of course, we got a little bit of Galaxy news, some Ventura County updates, and we also have our preview into the round of 32 against the Seattle Sounders, where we'll be traveling to Seattle. Even though it's a home game, we're traveling to Seattle, which I don't understand why that's the case, but make it make sense. I don't know. But point is, we go up against Seattle on Thursday for the round of 32 in the Leagues Cup. But yeah, should be a good conversation, should be a good episode. And of course, with me, as always, is my co-host, LA Galaxy Central. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. It's definitely very hot outside, so it's nice to be inside right now, but I'm doing all right overall.
Yeah, very hot couple of days in this beginning of August. And yeah, I mean, honestly, it was tough at work, like just completely sweating all the time. And it was just like, it wasn't good. But obviously try to drink a lot of water, try to stay hydrated as I can, which hopefully everybody else is trying to stay hydrated within these hot days. But yeah, I mean, obviously, couple hot days, but let's talk about something else that was hot, which was the hot game that we had on Sunday against Chivas at Dignity Health Sports Park. Like I said, it was a game that ended 2-2, led to penalty shootout, in which ultimately the Galaxy won and they topped the group with that result. So yeah, obviously it was a game where it went. You had some early goals in the beginning within the first 10 minutes. You had the goal by Chivas by Alan Mozo to start it all off. Payne still gets a goal like a minute after. A lot of, I guess some back and forth, a lot of, a game that stayed really close for the most part. Gabriel Peck ends up getting your second goal of the day, of the match. And then Chivas, again, in the final minutes of the game, gets a goal to tie it up, to send it to PKs. And then with a goal by Kate Cowell. And then ultimately we go into PKs. We miss one. Chivas ends up missing two. We end up getting the win on that one, get the 2 points, top the group. And overall, a good experience and a good result overall. It's what we wanted. We wanted to top the group. We had the opportunity to top it, and we end up doing it. But yeah, exciting game to say the least. But I mean, what are your thoughts about the game? How'd you feel about it? And break it down for me, man.
Well, yeah, obviously topping the group is great, but unfortunately that really means nothing, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, I agree. That's just completely ridiculous and just unreasonable for the Galaxy. But yeah, as for the game, it was definitely a very fun, competitive game, very back and forth. Felt like a stress-free game, honestly, because regardless of the outcome, we were through. So I could just sit and enjoy the game, and I really thought it was a good back and forth game. Like you said, we had Chivas scoring first, and then you had the Galaxy getting two, and Chivas in the final minutes. And in the penalty shootout, the Galaxy missed their penalty first. Chivas got a really lucky bounce off Mikovic. And at that point, I thought Chivas was going to win and go through. But then they missed theirs off the post, and Mikovic comes up with a big save. The Galaxy get the win, which, yeah, I mean, very good win. Very fun game, very back and forth. Honestly, I would say Chivas probably bottled it. They bottled the group. They got to play the worst team in MLS in San Jose, and they tied them and lost in a shootout. Then they got to play a rotated Galaxy team with their B team backline. All of their backline was backups. And in a formation we never played with before with two defensive midfielders. And, we missed the first penalty, and it looked like it was going to be their night. I feel like Chivas just completely kind of bottled it. But, I mean, good result for the Galaxy for sure. We've always been bad at penalties, for recent years, so it was good to see us win a shootout. It was good for practice, too, so definitely a very fun game for sure. But would you agree that Chivas kind of did bottle this group a little bit? Because that's how I felt.
I mean, yeah, as a Chivas fan, I 100% agree that we just bottled this tournament. And again, you can take the excuses of, oh, this is a team that's only played 4 games and this and that. But I think this was a manageable game for Chivas to go through. I mean, you go up against the worst team in in the league in San Jose. You don't get a result there. Again, in penalty shootout, you lose there. And again, for both of these games, Chivas were the home team. I mean, they had the home crowd with them. They had everything going for them, within these two games. And I think, they just really, Yeah, I mean, it was pretty disappointed from a Chivas standpoint, like a Chivas fan standpoint. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things that they have questions and they need to answer. I mean, how is this team going to look going forward in Liga MX? I don't know. And honestly, it's like, as a Chivas fan, I don't think people really, rate Chivas. Like, I don't think people take that team serious. I mean, you even saw in the game where Ricky Puig was laughing in front of Alan Moso's face when he missed would just shot up randomly a ball. It's like, it's like, and I think that's just kind of the story with Chivas right now. It's like, sure, they might have good players. Sure, this is a team that could, probably make the playoffs and maybe go on a run, but I don't think it's a team where people find a threat. So from a Chivas fan perspective, it's like, yes, they bottled it. They got a lot of work to be done, and I don't know what's going to be fixed for that Chivas team. Like, I don't know what's the answer for it. But yeah, 100%, they definitely bottled it for sure. But in terms of the Galaxy, though, I mean, obviously, like we said, it was a great result, right? Like, I mean, it was a good result for the Galaxy. It's what you wanted. You topped the group, and you even mentioned it yourself. I know you were probably talking about it through a fan perspective. You said stress-free, but I think it was also stress-free for the players. Like, I mean, for the team, like you can tell this team didn't really have, like, didn't feel the pressure, like, because they knew it's like, all right, we're through to the game, or we're through to the next round. If they win, it's not a big deal. If, whatever the case may be, it's like the Galaxy looked stress-free. Chivas looked like the team that had the most pressure because they needed to get a result. They needed to go get, the win, whether in penalties or straight up. It's like they needed to go get the win. And so Chivas felt the pressure. I mean, there was a lot of moments where Chivas was attacking and Galaxy wasn't really attacking as much, but that kind of tires out Chivas in a sense. Gabriel Peck goes and gets the second goal, and I thought that was going to be the end of the game. I didn't even think Chivas was going to come back at that point, and then until Kate Cowell gets that like last minute goal. But I mean, for the Galaxy, I mean, it's a very rotated squad. I think that for what we put out there, it was a good game for them, which obviously we'll get into the players later on. But like, I think it was a good game for a rotated squad, and again, a team that didn't feel the stress, the pressure of this game, even though they had, essentially Dignity Health Sports Park taken over in a sense, and it wasn't really to a certain extent wasn't in their favor, but still though they were calm, they were cool, they were collective, and they just got the job done. And I think that's something, that's something good for the Galaxy, that they need to be, not feel the pressure as much and try to play the game that they need to play. And I think that for the most part they executed that very well. So but yeah, I mean, honestly, I think for the Galaxy, you're kind of happy how they played, even though there wasn't really much of a high stake in this game, if that makes sense. Yeah. But anyways, I mean, how else did you feel about the game, though? I mean, obviously there was probably some things we could have fixed in this game. Like, did you feel like, what were some of your thoughts that we did good, or anything that we did that we need work on? Like, how'd you feel about it?
I mean, I'll say from a fan's perspective, the Galaxy supporters groups on TV sounded really loud, but I agree in the neutral section, since again, it was probably mostly Chivas fans, which is something I'd probably bring up. Like, how come when they come over here, like, they take over stadiums like that? Like, I never really understood that. Is it because they have a big following here? And it's not only here either. I mean, they took over San Jose. If they went to BMO Stadium, they'd probably have a big presence there too. Like, why don't MLS teams have a bigger presence in their stadium against these kind of big opponents like Chivas are?
Honestly, that's
History,
a really good,
probably.
probably history. I mean, let me think about it. I mean, Los Angeles, just in general, I think there's about I think 6 million within the population in Los Angeles is Mexican. Chivas is one of the popular teams in Mexico, so like that makes sense why there's a big following. But I mean, also, I mean, think about it this way, and this is not calling you out because I know you did this, but I mean, think about how many Galaxy fans kind of just saw the opportunity to sell their tickets because they know that they were going to get good money for these Chivas fans, right? And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, obviously, like, if you make your money, like that, go do what you need to do. Like, it's a good thing to do. But still, though, I think there's also just the fact that, yes, there's a lot of fans for the following, but then there's also things like, people selling their tickets on resale. I mean, think about it this way. Like, I mean, I'm a Galaxy and Chivas fan. There was probably a lot of, people in the stands who were probably both, and maybe even went for Chivas that day, solely for them. So, like, obviously, I think there's like a lot of different things that go into it, but definitely for sure, I think it's just because the fact that they do have a big following, here in in LA or even in San Jose, like, in some parts where there's a lot of a high Mexican population, right? So I think they're always going to find a way to take over stadiums in a sense. But, because obviously there's some teams that don't necessarily take over in Liga MX. Like not every team takes over. Like if Tigres were to come play here, they wouldn't necessarily take over. Yes, they have a good, fan base, but they wouldn't necessarily take over. Maybe places in like Texas they would, because I know there's like a lot of like Monterrey fans in there, or like people from Monterrey that live in Texas and stuff like that. So I guess it's also depending on, how many people just, from different places come and live here and things like that. So I don't know. I mean, obviously I think it's, I wasn't surprised that they took over, but I will say I was kind of like a little, like a little disappointed in the fact that the Galaxy have been playing good this season. They have been some might say they're a contender this season, and they're really doing good this season, and yet we didn't have that big of a fan presence. I will say I was a little disappointed, but again, not surprised that Chivas took over. If you I don't know if you felt the same way, but like that's kind of how I took it when you look at all the Chivas fans that kind of went into Dignity Health Sports Park.
I mean, I'll say two things. I think one, like, they probably had a lot of fan presence here because that was those fans of their team only chance to see the team coming to Los Angeles. Because if they work in Los Angeles and they live here, like, it's probably difficult for them to just go to Guadalajara at any time of the year to see their team play. So, fans of those teams were just, a lot more desperate to see their team play. Whereas for Galaxy fans, like, we've seen the team play the whole regular season, and we've seen the team play, like, we can still see it after Leagues Cup, where for Chivas or America fans, if they come here, it's like this is a one-and-done opportunity for, maybe another year plus. Like, who knows how long. And another thing I would say is I'm not disappointed because it's the Leagues Cup, but what I would say is if this is Champions League and that's happening, well, then I'm super disappointed. Like, for Leagues Cup, I'm like, all right, it's kind of like a friendly tournament anyways. Like, we already, like, are in the middle of our season. We've seen the Galaxy a bunch of times. If our fans don't show up, like, that's all right. But, like, if we're playing, like, Chivas in a Champions League game in, like, May and this happens, that would be a point where it's super bad. And I'm still hopeful, like, if we did get back into Champions League and played a Mexican team like that, we would have a lot more fans in the stadium. But for that game, I didn't care as much. But if it was a Champions League game, I'd probably care a lot more.
Yeah, that's fair enough too, because I mean, and you mentioned it yourself, right? Like, obviously, a lot of people here, can't necessarily go back to Guadalajara or Mexico in general, depending on the team that they go for, right? Because obviously, there's a lot of people who are undocumented. They don't have papers. They can't necessarily go back to Mexico because if they go back, they have to stay in Mexico. So it's like, like obviously, there's a lot of things like that. So yeah, for the most part, if one of your favorite Mexican teams is going to play here, it's like you're going to do whatever you can to go see them, because that's probably the only time you're going to see them within, like, maybe they only come in once or twice a year, into the States, and that just depends on where they play, right? So, yeah, obviously there is that aspect too. It's like, yeah, you have to, if you're a fan of a Mexican team, you're going to want to see that team that you go for. And yeah, and I agree with you too, in a certain extent, like, with the Champions Cup, like if this was a Champions Cup game, if we're facing Chivas or America or whoever the case may be, and it's mostly that other fan base, then yeah, I'd probably be way more disappointed in this. That's why I'm saying, like, I'm not surprised about the outcome of the game or of the fan turnout, but at the same time, it was like, well, the Galaxy are playing good. Like, I would hope, like, people would go and actually, I mean, and again, this is not to knock on the fans or anything like that either. Like, I'm not saying, but the way I'm trying to say is, like, I would hope to see more of a turnout because of the way we've been playing this season. And I think that's, something that we need to, like, I guess, try to go support more often, right? Even if it's a tournament that you don't necessarily rate that high. But for the fans who did show up that were Galaxy fans, I mean, they were loud. Like, I mean, the supporter sections were loud. Lars was loud, and even some of the fans that were just within the neutral sections, they were, making some noise there too. So I think, for the fans who did show up, I'm happy for those guys, and, proud of those guys for, supporting the way they could, with a team like Chivas coming into Dignity Health Sports Park. But, yeah, I mean, obviously though, like, I mean, it's not surprising that the turnout happened this way, but, it is what it is. I mean, but again, if this is a Champions Cup game, hopefully that's not the case where you have a team like Chivas or whoever the case may be just take over your stadium like that, because that's when you really need to defend your home, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, if it's a Champions Cup game, you want all the Galaxy fans to show up because that's a chance to win the biggest trophy in North America, so that's definitely a bigger deal. But I wouldn't really say say for Leagues Cup it's like a Galaxy thing either. I think, with all 4 of the California teams starting next year, like it would probably happen if Chivas or America came to any team in California in a Leagues Cup game. Like, they would probably have a majority of fans in the stadium because, like I said earlier, like the fans of those teams get to see their team play once or twice a year, whereas for like us, like we've seen the Galaxy a bunch of times and we still have a chance to see them after the tournament. So, I mean, it makes sense. Like, I don't think you should be disappointed or say it's a bad thing, but I mean, yeah, definitely like further into the tournament, like if we are able to go farther or like in the future too, like if we have more home games next year, hopefully, like, yeah, you would definitely like to see some more Galaxy fans there for sure. I agree.
Yeah, definitely for sure. But hey, like I said, like for those who did sell their tickets or anything like that, or whatever the case may be, it's like I'm not mad about that either. It's like do what you need to do. It's your ticket, things like that. So, and again, it's not like I'm super disappointed, but it's just kind of like I kind of just expected a little bit more of a turnout, I guess. Even if it was like 60-40, like even if like Chivas fans still like kind of had the upper hand, but there was still like a good more handful of Galaxy fans, I think that would have been okay with me as well. But still, though, I mean, it is what it is. And even with all that support that Chivas had, they still lost. So it is what it is.
Again.
Yeah, again, against the Galaxy. So, which, by the way, it kind of, as a Chivas fan, it kind of hurts. Well, not hurts, but it's just, let's just face it. I guess Galaxy kind of owns Chivas. Let's just say that.
I was talking about the group stage games.
Oh, the group stage games. But yeah, for both games, I guess. But,
yeah.
But even then, like if we're talking about Galaxy against Chivas, they have the upper hand on them, so it is what it is. But any other thoughts you want to take from the game or anything like that before we move on?
How do you guys lose to fucking San Jose though? Like, come on, dude. You're Chivas and you lost to San Jose, who's 4-19 in MLS, bro. Like,
I don't know. I really don't know. And again, as a Chivas fan, they're gonna have a lot of things to answer, and seemingly I don't even know if they have the answers or the solutions. But yeah, disappointing for as a Chivas fan, but definitely. Happy as a Galaxy fan and the fact they get to move on. I mean, shit, the Galaxy didn't make past the group stage last year, right? So now they do, and they go against Seattle for the round of 32. So we'll obviously preview that later on in the episode. But do you want to talk about the players right now?
I mean, yeah, speaking of the players, Chicharito getting injured in warm-ups, that was definitely disappointing, and a lot of people made fun of him for that, which, I mean, what can you really say about it?
Yeah, I know. I mean, hey, that happened to us once when he was here with the Galaxy too, where he got injured in warm-up. So it's not surprising.
He's a chill out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he just really went hard on those warm-ups, right? He's just like got excited for that. But yeah, I mean, obviously Chicharito was scheduled to start that game, ends up getting scratched last minute, which was pretty. I think a lot of people were disappointed. Especially Chivas fans were very disappointed that was the case. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Chicharito's got to figure it out too. That's another question that needs to be answered for Chivas. But like I said, speaking of players, let's talk about our players. So let's talk about the defense. Of course, this was a rotated lineup. Essentially, we played 3 in the back. I mean, sort of five in the back as well. We'll just talk about the defense right now. So obviously in goal, you had Mikovic. You had John Nelson in the game. You had Mauricio Cuevas in the game. And then you had Garces, Cáceres, and I was trying to think of the other player. All right, I got it up. So you had Mikovic, you had Cuevas, you had Garces, Zavaleta. There you go. That was the guy who we were. How did we forget Zavaleta? I mean, shit. When we saw the lineup, we were all like, "What, Zavaleta?"
First game in almost 4 months.
First game in almost 4 months, and so
you lost to him.
And Chivas manages to lose to a guy who hadn't played for 4 months. But still, though, yeah, that was your defense. So let me just run it by again. You had Mikovic, you had Zavaleta, you had Garces, you had Cáceres in there, you had Cuevas, and you had Nelson as your defense. Of course, we did get scored twice in this game, but I will say I don't think that's necessarily for both goals. It wasn't necessarily completely on the defense, I will say, in my opinion. But I think for the most part, I think the defense played good. I think Garces played a very good game for his first start. I mean, he was pretty class on that game. In fact, I think a lot of people were talking about his performance. Mikovic, again, with some crucial saves, some clutch saves in this game, and also winning it for us in this game in the penalty shootout. But how'd you feel about the defense in this one? What were your thoughts about it?
I mean, yeah, Chivas are so down bad right now. They lost to a guy getting his first ever start for a club and a guy who hasn't played in 4 months. Like, the last time Zavaleta played was in mid-April versus San Jose, where he almost fucked up the game for us. I don't even think he's been on the field since then, let alone a start. He hasn't even gotten subbed on since then. So for Chivas to lose to that, I mean, my God, that is really bad for them. That's pretty rough. But as for the defense, like, I think they played decently, honestly. I think Nelson had a really good game. I think Cuevas looked very promising again. Like I said a few weeks ago, I think Cuevas actually has made a pretty big jump this year, and I think it has been noticeable. Like, I still wouldn't call it a breakout year, but he's definitely become, like, a lot better. Like, before I'm like, oh, this guy's like an MLS Next Pro caliber player at best, to the point where now, like, earlier in the season, like in February and March, I was saying, like, oh, we need to get a backup right back to Yamane. Well, now I'm at the point where it's like, well, Cuevas can be that that backup right back. He's been good enough to that point now, so that's good. And yeah, the center backs, Garces played really good. Like you said, I agreed. He brought a lot of energy and just looked very good overall. Zavaleta, I don't think played that well, but what can you really expect? And Mikovic, yeah, I mean, he's raising real questions about, like, his playing time, if he should get more, like, what's going to happen, like, the rest of the tournament, possibly even after. I think next season, probably, in my opinion, is a bigger question, but yeah, Mikovic, definitely very good again. And like I said, every time Mikovic plays, I feel like he plays really well and he looks very promising. So I'd say a pretty good night for the backline. Just Zavaleta, I don't think looked great, which wasn't that surprising.
And even then, I don't think like I would say for Zavaleta, I think he was probably not the best player out of the defense, but I don't think he necessarily played like a really bad game or anything like that. That's what I'll say. Like, he probably wasn't the standout in the defense, but definitely, he didn't play like a really bad game. So I think for the most part, the defense played, I think they played solid, and just to mention some stats that Garces had that Sunday, he had 100% accurate passes, 100% tackles won, 86% ground duels won, 100% aerial duels won, even though it was just one aerial duel that he had, 4 clearances, 4 recoveries. I mean, that's a pretty good night for a center back who's getting his first start on the first team. I mean, listen, Garces was on Ventura County not too long ago, and the fact that he put up those kind of numbers for his first start, like, that's really impressive, for him. And then also, you mentioned Cuevas. I think another thing, Cuevas did get the assist for the first goal. So, I mean, yeah, he's been stepping it up, this season. Like you said, maybe not like a breakout season, but definitely you're seeing some improvement from him. And yeah, I mean, Mikovic, I think that's a really good conversation to have, because people are now saying, like, oh, is there a competition now with the goalkeepers? What is this going to mean for the goalkeepers? And it's like, I don't know if necessarily McCarthy's, off the spot, but definitely for sure, I think going into next season, that's going to be an interesting conversation on who gets to possibly get that first, that starting spot for the goalkeeper. Like, I don't know how you feel about the goalkeepers right now, but I definitely think, there are some questions for sure, like, on whether, Mikovic should get more starts, which I think he can get some more starts within the, going into the season, but we'll see what they do there. Of course, Cáceres, I think he played okay. Nelson, I think he played okay as well. But I think for the most part, overall, for the defense, they had a solid night. Again, when you look at the 2 goals that got scored on, I don't think really it was on the defense as much. I mean, yes, they could have done a couple things that could have, prevented those goals. But I think for the most part, the defense played solid, and I don't think you can fault them as much for those 2 goals.
Yeah, as for Mikovic, though, I think for the rest of the year, I think McCarthy's got that spot locked down as the starter. But definitely next year, like, McCarthy is getting older. He's not getting any younger. So next year could be a big year for Mikovic to really try to establish himself as the starter. I do think he has a lot of good qualities he brings to this team, like we've talked about before. He's very good with his feet. He's also a good shot stopper. He's very athletic. He's very young, too, so he has, like, a while to go and can still develop a lot if he gets more playing time. So definitely, like, a guy, like, I want to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, definitely for sure. He did get subbed off because he did get hurt in this game, so hopefully he's doing okay.
Garces.
Oh yeah, for Garces I meant, like, for not for Mikovic, but for Garces. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to say, for him, like, I hope he's doing okay, because he did get subbed off from that game, and hopefully he's doing okay. But as for Mikovic, yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to be interesting going into next season. I don't know how long McCarthy's contract was. I'm pretty sure he's good for next year, but still, though, like, that's going to be an interesting conversation. I don't think McCarthy gets his spot taken away. I think he's locked that for the rest of the year. But at least for Leagues Cup, this is Mikovic's spot. This is going to be his job for the however long we go into this tournament. But definitely for sure, he's showing a lot of good signs in his performances. So yeah, it's pretty good from him. But anything else you want to say about the defense before we move on?
Yeah, I would just say like Garces right now needs to be the first center back off the bench in my opinion. Like if Yoshida and Neal can't go, I want to see Garces being the starter, not Zavaleta, not throwing in Cáceres, which I have not been a big fan of whenever Vanny does that. I think Garces needs to be that first guy off the bench for us, at least for the rest of this season. And then if
Yeah,
Yoshida slows down next season, we can see what happens with him. But for the rest of this season, I think he needs to be the first guy off the bench.
yeah. I mean, definitely, Garces has shown what he can do, right? And I think this was a pretty big statement for him. So I think that he's going to get more opportunities for sure for the rest of the season. And also, like a lot of people were saying, the future's going to look bright with those center backs. I mean, with Neo playing the way he's been playing, and Garces, if he can, get some more performances like this, like what does that mean for our center backs going into next year? It's going to be a lot younger and a lot more. A lot more years and a lot more production for that position. So that's also another thing to look out for sure. But let's talk about the midfield, I guess. Or unless you had anything else to say about the defense. No? Okay. Let's talk about the midfield. Midfield, you had Cerrillo, you had Ricky Puig. I think that was basically it, right? Oh, you had Brugman as well into this game. He gets his first start, for this game as well. So, how'd you feel about the midfield? Of course, I think it was good to see Brugman get a start, and I don't think he played that bad of a game. Obviously, Ricky Puig kind of helped out within the first goal as well. But how'd you feel about the midfield in this game against Chivas?
Oh no, honestly, I don't think the midfield was great. I feel like it was a bit disorganized, which made sense. Like I said earlier, we were playing in a formation we've never played in before, so that wasn't great. I feel like the two sixes thing, two defensive midfielders, didn't really work out too well. They kind of got in each other's way, and there was a lot of confusion, some turnovers there. I mean, I don't know. I didn't really like that decision, but I guess like in this game, it was worth trying. And yeah, Ricky Puig obviously played really well. That pass on the first goal was absolutely incredible. I mean, not many players in this league can make that pass, and you saw the brilliance he displayed once again to create that tying goal. It was very impressive. And I think he had a good night overall. He was very competitive too, really getting into everybody's face and really getting, I guess, the Galaxy energized for this game, which was really good to see. But overall, I feel like there's a lot of, kind of disorganization in the midfield, which is why you need Delgado to start going forward.
Yeah, definitely for sure. But I will say, for Rugman getting his minutes, I don't, for his second game coming back, I don't think he necessarily played that bad either. He did get the captain's armband for this game, which was a good touch for him. But I mean, I think having two defensive midfielders kind of did mess up a little bit in this formation. But like you mentioned, it was a formation that we basically haven't really tried this season or just at all. And so, yeah, obviously there was a bit of confusion in the midfield, but I don't think there was necessarily a big control in the midfield. Like, I don't think, Chivas necessarily controlled the midfield either. So I guess you can look at it that way as well with the midfield. But I think, still though, it can be better, but, you didn't have Delgado in this one. So who knows what it could have been with Delgado, Brugman, and Puig to start off the game. But definitely for sure, like obviously, there was some bright spots in the midfield, but I think, probably wasn't the best night. Ricky Puig just keeps doing his thing and, makes some magic out of nothing and, talks crap on players and, Alan Mosso. And it got chirpy this game. It really did get chirpy.
Competitive.
Yeah, really competitive. Yeah, it is good to see, the team being competitive, and that's what you want to see, even when they face other teams, right? So it's going to be interesting. It is nice to see the competitive side of the team, but definitely for sure, the midfield, yeah, I think it was okay. It wasn't really too much into it, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is, I guess. But do you have any other points about the midfield before we move on?
I don't think so, no.
All right, then let's move on to the offense. So the offense, trying to remember who was in the offense actually. Obviously, you had I think it was just Paint, Still, and Peck, right? To the two guys, the two wingers on top. So obviously that was to start off the game. I don't know how you felt about those two, at least for to start off the game.
I mean, yeah, this game's kind of confusing, right? Like, the lineup was weird. It changed a lot through the second half, so you can't really, like, get a great idea about what happened. But, I mean, as for the start, I guess I'll just talk about the players. Like, I think Payne still played all right. He had some moments where he was good. He made some good runs. I still think he maybe should have taken some more shots, possibly, when he had him on, but it's good he at least got the game-time goal, which was an easy goal, but when you're asking him to play kind of that false nine, I mean, you'll take any goal you can really get. I think Peck had a good night as well. He had a really good moment for us. Against the run of play, I might add. Like, Chivas was really playing well at that point. I thought they were going to score. But just out of nothing, Peck hits a shot on his left foot into the far corner, and that was a very good strike. So it was good we got a moment of brilliance out of him after not really playing well in San Jose, so that was good. I feel like both of them had an alright night, but I feel like Peck was probably a little bit better because his goal was more timely and more impressive.
Yeah, I would say that as well. Obviously, Peck's goal was really nice. It was good to see Payne still get a goal, even if it wasn't necessarily the flashiest goal that he could have made. But still, though, you got still production from your DP wingers. I don't think it was fully as effective considering the formation that we had as well. So maybe that also kind of messed up their groove a bit. But hey, even with their groove messed up, they still got some goals under their belts, right? So I think it was a at least I think it was a decent night for both of those guys. To get some production in there and to, build off into their season. But still, it's a very confusing game, very confusing formation in general, and I think that really, really messed us up in a sense. But I think we played the best that we could, that we possibly could into this formation. But I guess we'll talk about the subs because I think obviously we did do a lot of subs in this one. We did end up changing the formation in this game. But any subs that kind of stood out to you in this game, or anything from the management side of the game?
I hardly even remember the subs, honestly, so you have to go through them.
I know Yamane came in at one point for. I don't think he came off for Cuevas. I'm honestly trying to remember who came off for who.
Yamane came on. I remember that.
I remember Yamane came on. I know Delgado ended up coming on, which ended up being, that's when we kind of shifted into our normal formation with the 4-3-3. Fagundes ended up coming on as well. So obviously, like, you got to see more of your starters go in, like Yamane, like Delgado, Fagundes going in as well, and that kind of made, we sort of shifted into our normal play style. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously those were some subs. I'm trying to think who else might have gone in, unless that was really it. But
Isaiah Parente for a little bit.
Isaiah Parente did come in for a little bit. I think that's when Garces ended up coming off and he had to come in. So yeah, I mean, obviously there was some subs here and there, but how'd you feel about them, or how'd you feel about, I guess, the management of those subs?
I don't know. I feel like they weren't really that effective, to be honest. Like, I didn't really notice much of a difference. I would have liked to see Miguel Berry come on, which I can't believe I'm saying that, but like, I would have liked to see the Galaxy at the end of the game play with a natural 9 because I feel like that would have helped closing out the game, having a target man up top. But I don't know. They weren't great subs, honestly. They didn't really do that much. They weren't bad subs either. Like, they were the right ones to make. They just didn't have much of an impact on the game.
Yeah, I mean, basically, like, I mean, it was just kind of, just kind of getting more back into our rhythm, into our normal formation. So it's like, it really didn't make much of a difference. So yeah, I mean, obviously the subs were, they just did whatever they could. I guess Fagundes did mess, in the penalties. So I mean, I guess there was that. But even then, it's just like, penalties are, they're hit or miss, literally. So it's like, anything could happen there. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously for the subs, I think it was just okay, I guess, for the most part. They were the right subs, but necessarily not the most impact you had in that one. And yeah, I'm surprised we didn't get Miguel Berry in this one. Even if, like, again, whether you wanted him or not in this game, I think it was kind of surprising that they didn't put him in this game. But I guess that's why you had Fagundes come in, so then you kind of shifted Paintstone to the 9, and so, obviously you played more with that. But yeah, it was pretty interesting that you didn't get to see Miguel Berry. But someone who did play like Miguel Berry on the Chivas side was Ricardo Marin, which, holy crap, did that guy had so many chances for Chivas, then did not convert.
It's not that bad, to be fair. Like, when you told me in the pregame, like, he was the Miguel Berry of Chivas, I was watching out for him. I mean, he's not great, but, like, he wasn't, like, that bad, in my opinion. He's an okay player.
I don't think so. I don't know. I really don't think he is the Miguel Berry.
I don't watch him that much. But
trust me,
game, he looked okay.
Trust me, what you saw there is the Ricardo Marin experience for Chivas. Like, that's literally his games. That's not just a one-off thing. So he is the Miguel Berry of Chivas. I'm sorry, but still, though, it was just like, if we wanted a Miguel Berry-esque player that was in this game, it was on the other team. So I guess there was that. But anyways, so I guess those were the players. Any other points about the players or just the game in general before we move on?
No, Aguirre getting into the game, that was kind of unfortunate. I was hoping he can get on at some point.
Yeah, no Galaxy players came on into this game. Obviously, Chicharito didn't play, and then no Daniel Aguirre. I guess there was kind of no point of putting in a Daniel Aguirre at this point because they were playing from behind.
True,
yeah. They were playing from behind, and what we know from Daniel Aguirre, he's more of the guy who kind of contains the scoreline, right? Like he's the guy who kind of keeps the game.
Loss.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think putting in Daniel Aguirre would have really helped Chivas in a sense, but still though. Another thing, I guess, actually, before we move on, obviously we talked a little bit about the penalties, but like I mentioned last episode, like, if we did go into a penalty shootout, did this kind of penalty shootout kind of teach you anything for the Galaxy? I know it's just more like practice, I guess, if we do come into a penalty shootout, but were you at least kind of like impressed with what we saw from the penalties or anything like that?
Honestly, like a little bit, but I'd honestly say like Chivas again, like kind of bottled it. Like we missed the first penalty, and then to top that off, like Chivas took a penalty, it hit the bar, and then it went straight off Mikovic into the back of the net. Like if you can't win a penalty shootout when that goes your way, it's like, well, when are you ever going to win one? So I think that one was just more about Chivas just kind of falling apart more so than the Galaxy actually looking impressive.
Yeah, I will say that. But hey, another thing though, I think that did impress me from the penalties was that none of your star players missed his penalty. Like
Ricky made, penalty was really good.
Yeah, like Ricky made his. Paint Stills was really nice. His on the top corner. Gabriel Peck ends up making one too. So it's like Yamane gets one. Yamane had a really nice penalty actually. But yeah, I mean, for those guys, at least they scored penalties, and especially like Ricky Puig, who we've seen miss penalties multiple times. Like, I mean, they shot their penalties well. But it was unfortunate that Fagundes would happen to be the only guy to miss his penalty. But
it wasn't even a bad one either, honestly.
No, it wasn't. I think it was, well, then again, I don't know, because if you miss it, was it actually a good penalty? Like, you can't say I shot it. Yeah, it's like, yeah, a good save, but it's like, I don't know. But point is though, it's like it's unfortunate that he did get his shot blocked. But still though, we ended up winning, and also Mikovic, was clutch in that one as well for the final one against Diva to close it out. So yeah. But anyways, any other final points you want to talk about the game or anything else before we move on?
Definitely a very fun game to watch for sure. Like I was entertained by it.
Yeah, it definitely was entertaining. I think, again, from a neutral perspective, it was entertaining. It's what you wanted. You got goals, you got drama, you had, a penalty shootout. Like, I think there's, it's what you could ask for, I guess, for an exciting game. So, yeah, definitely exciting for sure. Chivas goes home. We continue into the round of 32 against the Seattle Sounders. But before we go into the Seattle Sounders game, that preview, obviously there is a little bit of Galaxy news, not that much, but just a little bit to talk about. I think they gave some updates with Julian Aude and Dejan Jovalic. I believe what I read or what I saw, I think Julian Aude was kind of more, not necessarily ready to play yet. His might still take a while, maybe even going into the restart into the season. And Dejan Jovalic looks like to be a little bit closer to coming back. Obviously, it's still going to be a wait and see type of thing, depending how far we go into this tournament. But of course, you did get a little bit of updates from those two players, which is, two players that we're going to need in this, not if they're able to play in this tournament, but also, into the final stretch of the season. So I guess there was a couple, just a little updates on them. Ventura County, you told me they got a big win over the weekend. How did they do?
Huge win. They got a 3-2 win over St. Louis in St. Louis, and St. Louis is a top 3 team in the West, and the Galaxy were I believe 5 points behind them, and now they're only 2 points behind them, so it was an absolutely huge win. And they were down 2-1 in the game and managed to win the game in regulation. And their first regulation win also in 7 games before they were winning penalty shootouts, but their first regulation win against a team like St. Louis, definitely a huge deal.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a huge deal. I mean, obviously, comebacks are always a big deal. And if they took something from the first team with comebacks and being resilient, it was that, right? So definitely a good big win for Ventura County. And yeah, that's big that they get closer into, behind St. Louis, right? So that's a good thing as well. You got to keep your competition close to you in those standings. So good on Ventura County. Good for that, good for their performance. But that was a Ventura County update as well. So yeah, that was really it. Much for the Galaxy news and the updates, I guess. So now we'll talk about.
One more thing though for the news.
Oh, go ahead if I missed something.
Do you think we'll sign a U22 initiative player in the next week? We have one more week to do that. Apparently, Rocco Royce. We keep hearing it's close, but we're not getting any updates really. But we can still assume that might happen. But a U22 DP player, do you think that's on the cards for the next week? Or do you think they'll hold on to that spot? I'm kind of curious to see what they'll do with it, maybe.
I mean, the fact that we haven't heard anything about even signing another player. I mean, the fact that we haven't heard anything about another player, that kind of makes me think that it's not gonna happen. But hey, you never know. Sometimes things happen in the last day of the transfer window, so you never know.
I will say, probably what changed that is us having success with Painsall at the false nine against Colorado and Portland, like that might have changed a potential transfer because we found something that could work for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for sure. Because obviously, I think something that Will Kuntz does is that he doesn't necessarily, he'll pull the trigger when he has to, but he's not necessarily, does it on everything, right? Like he likes to, analyze what we got and what we can do. And I think, and also just Greg Vanny as well, right? Part of that as well, trying to see what could work into the offense when you don't have a player like Dejan in there. So it's like, yeah, I think obviously they just wanted to see what could work, and they found something that could work, right? Like obviously you saw success with Payne still playing that false nine. So so I don't know. In terms of a U22, I think as of right now you can kind of count that out. But again, you never know. Things could happen within the next week. Something could brew up last minute into the transfer window. And then as for Marco Reus, I mean it's gonna happen, but it's just a matter of when. So that's all we can say about Marco Reus as of right now. But still, though, we'll see what they do within the next transfer window. But again, are you would you be at least a little maybe not disappointed, but I think do you really think they should try to find something with that U22 spot, or would you be okay if they don't get anything?
I would be okay if they didn't, if they really believe Painsall at the false nine is a real solution for the rest of the season, and he's okay with that. But it would be kind of weird to me because, like, a few weeks ago we were hearing, like, oh, the Galaxy wanted to get a midfielder with that U22 DP spot to bring some more energy into the midfield. Because when we lost Daniel Aguirre, I mean, who's the backup to Mark Delgado right now? We don't really know. I guess you could say it's Cerrillo, but that would mean Brugman's on the field and you're playing with 2 6s again. Would that make sense? I mean, it would make sense to bring in another midfielder, so I heard that before, so I was like, all right, that sounds reasonable, but, like, we don't know. And then we heard, like, after the FC Dallas game where Miguel Berry just basically didn't even show up, didn't really do anything, Greg Vanny said in the press conference, oh, we might use that spot on another forward, we're considering it. And now it's like, after that Dallas game, we had 2 good games against Colorado and Portland with Painsall at the false nine. He scored in both of those games. It's like, maybe that's not going to happen. So I would just say, like, it's against, maybe the plan we had, but if it's not the right time to use it, I don't think you should just use it to use it. Like, you should use it when a good opportunity comes to use it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Also, another thing onto why it possibly won't happen is also the cap space. Right now,
it's tough.
It's very tough for us right now because we don't have that much money, or at least not that much cap to work with. Obviously, with Mark,
we have money. We have AEG. They have a lot.
We definitely have money, but in a cap salary based league, I mean, we don't have that much cap. That's what I mean when we don't have money, I guess. But still, though, yeah, like there's not that much cap space for us. Obviously, when we sent Johnny Perez to Nashville, which is going to lead into Marco Reus, that essentially freed up a little bit of cap space to get Marco Reus. So at that point, how much cap space do we have? Probably none, or little to none. So that's all.
I know what's funny when you're done.
But I don't know what exactly. I don't know if we were trying to bring a player in, what cap space we would have to bring that player in. But go ahead.
People were saying, like, oh, why are we getting rid of Perez? We should have got rid of Zavaleta because their salary, like, kind of is in a similar ballpark. But, like, people were also saying, well, we actually have to get rid of players that people want. So it's like, yeah, that made a lot of sense.
Yeah, you
try to get rid of Zavaleta, like, hey, you want Zavaleta, you call up every team in the league and be like, nope, we're good.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't FIFA where you can, or like a sports game where you can just force a trade.
Quick sell.
Yeah, quick sell or force a trade. Like, it's not how it works in the real life. You have to actually manage,
give an asset.
Yeah, an asset. So it obviously made sense to send Johnny Perez on the loan. But even then, there's probably no other assets where you could really say, like, hey, like we can move this player and we can make.
Castro Sween's about to retire.
Maybe, I guess. Obviously,
no, that's not gonna happen.
I don't think so. But I was also hearing also with Chris Mavinga when he got waived earlier in the season that we still might be kind of paying him in a sense, so that's kind of affecting the cap. So it's like
Klein is still hurting us right now.
Yeah, so it's like there's obviously a lot of things that go into the cap space in managing the cap, but but obviously people have their opinions on roster rules and roster management in this league, so that's just kind of the part of the way it works right now and the way it is. But yeah, though. So but as of right now for cap space, in terms of money, we have no money, so not a lot to work with. So it'd be surprising actually to see if they get another player within this window. But hey, like I said, you never know.
For kind of salary cap space, like obviously, like we had a lot of salary cap space this offseason. We offloaded a lot of players, let a lot of players walk. We made some trades that created a lot of room for sure. But I would still say though is like when you look at this roster right now, there's space like in the future, in the near future, to possibly have more cap space. Like when you look at this roster, like okay, a guy like McCarthy is probably not going to be here that long, and he's making kind of decent money. Caceres is gone after the season. He's on the verge of retiring, apparently. He's not going to come back. Zavaletta's not a long-term piece on this team. And you still have the U22 DP spot open. So it's like that's 4 spots I just named that are like actual like rotation players to even a good player maybe with that U22 DP spot. So I feel like maybe not this season because we've already spent a lot of money and add a lot of contracts on the book, but maybe in like a year or two, there'll be a lot more space to maybe add some more players. And plus, we could always sell at any point, too. You don't know what's going to come up.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Like, obviously, there's a lot of things that you can manage, in the offseason. Also, Yoshida's another player that could possibly not return next season.
Oh, yeah, him too. That's 5 spots.
That's 5 players you can get next year. So it's like
5 legit players, too, not just Ventura County Columns.
No, exactly. So, obviously right now, I guess it is a little, frustrating to see that you can't really bring in players, but in terms of next season, which is going to be a pretty big deal, that could go a long way as well. But yeah, in terms of this year, obviously for the cap and stuff like that, we just don't have.
I mean, Royce is still good on a TAM deal like that. I think a lot of teams would take that. Teams were even offering him a DP contract.
Yeah, I think Charlotte was actually offering a DP contract, because he had the discovery rights, or Charlotte had his discovery rights. So yeah, I think he could have gotten a DP player, but getting him on TAM is pretty wild to say the least. But still, though, for the cap, like, obviously right now, I don't think there's really much to work with. But if we somehow get a player in there, I don't think we'd I guess depending on the player, I don't think we'd be necessarily, disappointed about it either. But, we'll wait and see what happens in the last week of the transfer window. But anyways, now let's go into our preview against the Seattle Sounders, which takes place this Thursday. At Seattle in Lumen Field, round of 32. Technically is our home game, but I don't. Again, make sense. Leagues Cup, I don't understand it, but and the fact that we topped the group and they didn't, it's just I don't know. But point is,
I'll get into that.
Yeah. Point is, we go into Seattle this weekend, or not this weekend, this Thursday. Obviously, the Pacific Northwest hasn't necessarily been nice to us. Obviously, last time we played Seattle in Seattle this season, it was a 0-0 tie, which really was probably one of the most boring games that we've had this season. But obviously now this is a knockout game. This is a game that matters. This is the game that, either team wants to go move into the next round. So, how do you feel about going up against the Seattle Sounders? Obviously, we haven't lost to them this season, but I think this could be a game where anything could happen. But how do you feel about this game going into Seattle?
I mean, yeah, first we can talk about the structure of the tournament. Like, I think it's so stupid we're going up to Seattle. It's just absolutely ridiculous. One of the dumbest things I've ever seen in the game of football, like this tournament. I mean, like, what the actual fuck is that? Like, we're having a better regular season than the Sounders. We had a better group stage than the Sounders. We finished first. They finished second. We've been better all year. Yet we're getting punished because of what we did in 2023. That makes absolutely no sense. Like, if you're going to make it, like, regular season based, like, okay, that's fine, but make it this year's regular season standings. In fact, I don't even think that would be a bad idea because the regular season at this point, like, almost isn't good in MLS because 8 teams make the playoffs, 9 teams make the wild card game. So, you like, in MLS, like, there's not really a lot to play for in the regular season if you're not really in the Supporters' Shield standings. I guess there's positioning, but still, like, if you're going to do that, like, make it this year's standings, like, so it's more up to date. The fact that it's last year's standings is just so dumb, honestly. And just very disappointing overall. And, like, the fact that we have to go to Seattle, too, like, I mean, Seattle is basically, like, season-ending injury capital of the United States with that turf field. I believe, like, the most season-ending injuries in the league happened in Seattle. So, I mean, I'm concerned for the players there. I'm kind of split in between about how I want to go into this game, if I want to go starters, if I don't. I mean, look, the reality is we're 3 wins away from a CONCACAF Champions League spot for the first time in 10 years. I mean, that's a huge, huge deal if we were able to do that, and I think we should go for that. But at the same time, like, do you want to play like guys like Pooch and Peck in Seattle where if a season-ending injury happens, I mean, I'm not going to say our season's over, but, man, our chances really drastically go down. So it's just difficult. And Sounders, I mean, they're all right. They're still a pretty decent opponent. They have a couple injuries right now, too, like De La Vega got injured, and they're still all right. They're going to be a good challenge, but, I mean, for the Galaxy's approach play, I don't know how they'll go into this game, and I think it's kind of ridiculous the fact that this game's not being played at Dignity Health Sports Park. It really should be when you look at it.
And not only just the standings of this season, it should just be the fact that we won the group. It's like,
or the group stage.
It's like that's literally every other tournament. It's like you get a home game or you get the favored because you win the group. It's like that's literally how it should work. But
imagine we finished top 3 in the West and we didn't get a home playoff game because last year we finished in 13th. Like, imagine that was the structure. That's basically what it is right now.
Yeah, it's so stupid. Like, again, make it make sense. It's just like, you know, like, why do you got to make it so difficult and so weird and just like, I don't know. It's like, I don't even want to say it's Americanized because it's not even that either. It's just a stupid way to approach it. A stupid like.
Well, it is Americanized.
Well, it is, but like
because no one else does it.
But no, not like nobody in the NFL does it. Nobody in the NBA does that. Like if you get a good seed, you get a home game.
That's true.
You know,
the playoffs they don't do that here either.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Champions League.
Exactly. So it's just like it's just a stupid rule, but. I mean, I guess it is what it is. We got to play under the circumstances that are played, but yeah, I mean, obviously Seattle, of course, it's going to be a challenging a game. They're still a decent team. They're still a team that still has the right pieces and still can go out and compete. And like you mentioned, the field is going to be is an interesting too, because obviously turf field, that can cause some injuries. How do we approach that?
Especially their turf field. Like, it's one of the worst in MLS.
Yeah.
Like, even the ones in like Portland and Atlanta are a lot better, but Seattle's is known to be like really bad for injuries.
I've heard Atlanta was worse, but that's what I've heard. But
not in MLS.
I think actually Portland actually has the best turf field. Theirs actually seems pretty nice, and I don't think there's really that many injuries that have happened in Portland. So, at least for them, they have a really nice turf field. But for Seattle, yeah, it's like one of those places where it's like you don't really want to play because you could possibly get injured. So,
and we shouldn't be playing there.
And we shouldn't be playing there to begin with. But still, though, it's like, yeah, for Seattle, it's still a good team. It's still a place that we've had challenges for how many years. It's just like. I think it'll be interesting how we approach this game. I just hope that it's not necessarily I just hope it doesn't lead to anything bad. Like, I mean, again, with the turf and everything like that. And also think about last time we played in Seattle, they didn't water the turf. So it's like, does Seattle do that again in this game? That could affect the game and how the ball is played and the ball is traveled. That also affects our style of play. So it's just like, like there's so many things that like how we approach this game is going to be interesting how it does or how we do it. But still though, like I think it's a game that like if the Galaxy feel like we can go out and beat them and feel like we can go out and move into the next round, I think they should still try to do that. But I think there should be some like a bit of cautiousness going into that game into Seattle, playing on the turf. Maybe a player like Brugman doesn't play in this game because he's barely coming back from injury, right? So, like, maybe you don't give him that many minutes in this game. So it's like, you got to manage your players and how they play this game. So it's just like, I don't know. It'll be interesting for sure. I think the Galaxy could have a chance to go into the next round, but still, though, it's a tough opponent to go play in a tough place to go play.
Honestly, like, I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion. I think it's probably like split between people, but I would not play any of the DPs in this game, in my opinion.
Oof. I mean,
I wouldn't, man. Honestly.
Yeah, I know. It's just like.
If it was at Dignity Health Sports Park, I would. But for this game, I'm just not going to put that much eggs into this basket, especially with the history that field has.
Yeah. But how many of our players have gotten injured in Lumen? It's like, or have gotten like I don't know. It's like.
There's always a first one.
There's always a first one. There's always a time for a first, right? So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. That is a very interesting approach. It's like, do you put in all your eggs in the basket for this game?
Go ahead.
Oh, my bad.
I mean, I'll say this, like, I think the goal for the end of the year for us is we want to win MLS Cup. Like, that's our main goal. That's what the Galaxy prides themselves on. Obviously, we're the only club in MLS with 5 stars above our badge, so that's where we want to be. We want to be adding that 6-1. Like I don't know, like, Leagues Cup, like, to me, like, it is important because we're 3, wins away from a Champions League spot, and we haven't been there in forever, so that's a big deal, but... I'm just not going to jeopardize the last 8 games of the regular season and the playoffs for a Leagues Cup round of 32 game on a dangerous field in Seattle against a team that, like, picks up a lot of injuries there. Like, I just wouldn't play the DPs. Like, if we go out, like, yeah, that's unfortunate. But, like, at least we made it out the group. At least we're not sitting at home for 3 weeks. Instead, it's just, like, 2 weeks. So it's a little bit, less worse. We get a little bit rest. We get to go in there, for the final, like, 8 or 9 games, whatever it is. And I think our goal is to win MLS Cup. Like, if you can advance, great. Like, you should try to, but I don't know. Like, I just wouldn't feel comfortable playing the DPs in this game. Like, because if Peck or Pooch or Painstill go down, like especially Peck or Pooch with the way they've been playing like all season, I mean that's just basically problematic for the Galaxy. That would be very tough to overcome. So I don't know, honestly. You can give your thoughts about what you would like to see, but I'm very kind of hesitant on that playing them. Maybe.
I mean, I think it's not necessarily the fact that you don't play them at all. I think it's just a matter of managing their minutes, right? Like I don't think this should be a game where you can go out and just like I don't think necessarily Pooj or Peck or any of these guys necessarily need to play the whole 90 minutes, right? Like so I think it's just a matter of, how do you manage this game and and again it's like what is Greg Vanny's approach on this? Like I mean obviously he said it before this tournament was that if they're in a position to go win it and they feel like they can go win it, they're going to try to go and do that. So does Greg Vanny go into the Seattle game and say like, hey, like, I think we have a really good chance. I think we should really go for it. Or does he say, you know what, this is going to be a difficult opponent to go into a place like Seattle. Maybe I should dial it down a little bit. Maybe not put all my eggs in the basket for this. And, whatever happens is whatever happens. So I think it's also how Greg Vanny thinks about this as well. So, I mean, honestly, it's just like, I mean, I think it'll be pretty, a lot of people would be kind of disappointed if, all three of your DPs are off the field, because obviously we want to see them on the field. We want to see them compete in this game. Like, obviously they're good. They're our best players. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it's like, you don't want them to get hurt at this point. And again,
Can't afford it.
You really can't afford it. And again, like you mentioned, now at this point, it's, you're not waiting at home 3 weeks. You're waiting, 2.5 at most, So it's like, it wouldn't be that bad, I guess, for the Galaxy. But at the same time, it's just like, I don't know. It's really tough. It's really tough to look into that game and whether they want to try it or not. But I guess we won't find out until Thursday, right? We won't find out how until that lineup comes out and how they want to approach this game. But definitely for sure, I think it's interesting to see how they manage the game in general, for Seattle.
The fact that the game is in Seattle just makes it so much worse, though. Like, if we were at home, I don't think this would be a problem or discussion, but the fact that we're going to Seattle is just like, it's very frustrating, honestly, because any other place in the world, this would not be happening. Like, we finished first in our group. We're having a better season this year. Like, why is the 2024 Galaxy being punished for something last year's team did with a team, with no players we have right now? Like, that's just kind of ridiculous, in my opinion.
Obviously, though, like Seattle fans, like they even think that it's not it's not necessarily fair, or they don't think they deserve to, host a home game right now. And then again, the fact that it's being called our home game when we have no home advantage, it's like, it's so stupid. It's blasphemy. Like it really is blasphemy that the fact that this is how the tournament's being run. But like I said earlier, I mean, we got to play in the circumstances that we're in, but still though, it's gotta, like, again, I think this is I don't know what's going to happen next year, obviously, if this tournament's going to happen next year, but if it does, or the year after, whatever the case may be, or not even the year after, because the World Cup's going to be here. So it's like, if they bring this tournament back at some point, they gotta find a way to fix that. Like, that's just so stupid, but hey, it is what it is, I guess. But still though, this game should be in Dignity Health Sports Park regardless of the situation. But yeah, any other points you want to talk about, about Seattle or anything like that before we close it out?
Yeah, obviously the number one priority is to get no injuries for sure. Also go out there, go compete. Hopefully you give them a good game. Hopefully we can advance in some way no matter who we have on the field. And yeah, it should be an interesting one. Obviously the Galaxy and Sounders have a lot of history in knockout games. The Galaxy have come on top of a good amount of those, like the 2012 playoffs, the 2014 playoffs, a lot of good memories. So hopefully we can make another one.
Obviously it's still an important game against Seattle. Obviously, like you mentioned, there's been a lot of history between us two. A lot of very interesting, games, a lot of, important games and knockout games in the playoffs and things like that. So obviously we'll see what happens for sure, how we approach this game. Hopefully we get no injuries within this game, and hopefully we don't get any, hopefully everything turns out okay after this game, whether we advance or not. So, but yeah, obviously that will be this Thursday at 7:30 at Lumen Field. I don't know if there's any fans who are potentially traveling to this game. If they do, obviously safe travels if you go to Seattle to go watch the Galaxy play.
At home.
At home, yeah. Safe travels to our home game this week. But for real though, like if you do go to the game, obviously, safe travels up to Seattle. But yeah, obviously, that's going to be this week. But we're going to close out the episode. Can't thank you guys enough for watching and listening. If you want to follow me at social media. Follow me at Insider Galaxy on Instagram, on X. Go follow LA Galaxy Central on Instagram. And anything else you want to say to the listeners and the followers before we go?
Hopefully we're able to advance.
Yeah, hopefully we're able to advance, and hopefully we're injury free for sure. Regardless of the result, but definitely, regardless though, it is an important game. Let's hope we do the best, and let's hope for the best. But can't thank you guys enough. Be a friend, tell a friend about the podcast, whenever you're listening to this podcast. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day, rest of your night, and thank you guys. Cheese up.
7 words.